In this video, I'm going to explain to you how to use the work that you did on your brainstorming character and conflict sheet, where you thought about pressures your character faces and people who influence your character's beliefs, and your character's questions or doubts. You're going to use those ideas and the conflict that you came up with to map out your story. So when you go to write your part one, you know exactly what you're going to write. First, you want to think about what is the situation. So the situation in part one is that your character is getting involved in the war, whether that's by choice or for another reason. But you've got to come up with the conflict that your character is facing about that. Part one needs one key conflict that's at least partially resolved. So what's an internal conflict that your character could face? And you see some sentence starters there to help you figure out how to say that. For my character, I'm struggling about whether to enlist and leave home or stay home, help my mom, and pursue my education. You know from my brainstorm that I'm really close to my mom because my dad has left us for a younger woman, and my mom is also sick with cholera. So I'm struggling about my responsibility to be with her versus the pressure that I'm feeling to leave home. So knowing that conflict, now I'm going to turn to step one, which is actually the climax. Where is there going to be a turning point for my character? And I know that my resolution has to be that my character decides to get involved with the war because that's what's going to motivate the rest of the story. So what is the climax where these two different forces that I'm struggling between are going to come head to head and I'm going to make a decision? So I know that it's going to be a conversation with my mom because my mom really feels like the biggest point that would push me in one direction or the other. So I think it's going to be raining outside and I'm going to be stuck inside the house with my mom. There's going to be an uncomfortable silence because it's really tense about what decision I'm going to make. And then we're going to have a big conversation where it's all going to become clear about why I need to join the war. Now I'm going to think about my rising action. What are the things that are going to lead up to this big conversation with my mom where I'm going to tell her that I have decided to join the war? And I'm going to get ideas for that from the brainstorm that I've done. So I know that my mom does not think that the war is a good idea. And so I want to have a scene where I talk to my mom about that. But I also need to feel some pressure to join the war. And I know that my character really values education. So I think my character is going to get invited to attend a local university on scholarship. So all of a sudden his dreams of really continuing his education and becoming a professor feel like they might actually come true. So I'm going to start with step A as I think about my rising action, knowing that I've got to lead up to this big conversation with my mom. I'm going to start at step A. I'm going to find out that my character has been granted a scholarship for a local university. So suddenly that's all I want to do. I want to get out. I want to get out of the house. I want to dedicate myself to education, and I want to be a better man to make my mom proud. But then I know I need some pressure that pulls me in another direction toward the war. So I think that I will run to tell my best friend the good news about the university acceptance. And when I go to tell my best friend my news, he's going to have news also. And he's going to tell me that he's enlisting in the war. And I think after that, after I hear that news from him, I'm going to notice all the propaganda in the streets in a whole new way. That all of a sudden it's going to feel targeted at me in a way it wasn't before. I know I still need to have like an initial conflict with my mom to set up this big conversation. So as I'm thinking about my mom, I know that I think that I want her to believe the war is wrong. I want her to have some strong moral beliefs around that. So I think I'm going to go, based on my conversation with my friend, I'm going to go tell my mom that I'm considering enlisting, and she's going to be shocked and angry. Knowing that my mom is still angry at my dad for leaving the family, and that she's really been hurt by that, I think she's going to appeal to my sense of like being a good son and a good person. So I think she's going to say that I'm against the war and I raised you to be an honorable man, not a violent killer, and tell me that she's afraid of what the war will do to my character. And then she's going to appeal to my memories of my dad. So she's going to say that my dad wasn't honorable, he was selfish, and don't be like him and leave me here to do the wrong thing. So that is what's going to lead us up to the next day, I think, where it's this big tension between me and my mom because we left off on a bad note on that conversation. And that takes me up to this conversation with my mom at the climax. Now that I've built up those pieces, I have a better sense of what that conversation with my mom is going to sound like. It's going to include some ideas about honor and being the right kind of man, not a man like my dad, and how really this is the right choice for both of us and to help me take care of her as well as myself. So I think in that conversation with my mom, I'm going to talk about what honor means. And so for me, honor means keeping those that I love safe, and that is closest to my heart. I'm going to try to argue back against her that the war is not about the violence, and war is more about honor and investment in the greater good. So I'm not wanting to go to war because I want to be a killer. I'm going to war because I believe in Germany. I believe in the idea of a fatherland, and that if I can keep our fatherland strong, that we will all be safer together. And then I think I'm going to answer her and say that, Mom, like being brave and being strong, that is the man you raised me to be. And that I'm not becoming a killer. I'm just being strong and I'm doing the right thing here. And being selfless and taking care of other people is not staying safe here at home while people like my friend and the people around me rush off to battle to defend our country. Really being selfish and being noble is leaving home, even though it's hard. So now that we've had that big conversation, now I can figure out my resolution. So he feels confident in his head that becoming a professor feels selfish, like his father, and he's committing himself to the greater good. And because he's been able to speak on this so eloquently, his mom finally understands his decision and gives him her blessing, and my soldier's going to head off to the war. So that's how my soldier is going to resolve. The last step that I'm going to do is cut back and plan my setting and my exposition. So knowing that the first step of my rising action is that he's going to find out he's been granted this scholarship, I need to have the setting be a place where he might start to get that information. So I did some research and I found out that German high school is called a gymnasium. So my story is going to open at the gymnasium, which is the local high school, and he's going to be checking the result of the Abitur, which is the high school exit exam that would get him into college. So my opening scene that I'm going to describe with some sensory details is I will describe the sound of the hallway, the echoes of his footsteps as he goes down the empty hallway. He's going to ignore the propaganda that's fluttering to the ground, pressuring other people to go to war because it just doesn't feel relevant to him. He's so focused on his goal of education. As he gets closer and closer to this list of the people's scores on the test, knowing that the top of the list are the people who will get scholarships to this university, he's going to be able to hear his pulse in his ears. His palms are going to be sweaty, but his eyes are going to be focused straight ahead. He's nervous, but somehow he already knows that he's done well. He's going to get closer and closer and closer to the list. He's going to start reading the names from the bottom of the list, slowly moving up to make sure he's not at the bottom. But his name doesn't appear and doesn't appear until he gets to the top of the list, and there it is. And he reads it 3 more times just to be sure that his name is at the top. That moment is the catalyst that will start my rising action in motion when he checks the list and sees that he has been guaranteed this scholarship. Based on this now, I have mapped out my whole plot. I know where my story is going to start. I know which events I'm going to need to talk about. I can even start to see where I'm going to need to have some dialogue. I'm going to have an interaction with my friend. I'm going to have a conversation with my mom, where I'm going to have some dialogue. And I know that I can use some figurative language and description in that setting, as well as what the atmosphere is like in the climax when my mom and I are sitting in this quiet house with the rain all around us. So I feel pretty good about my story, ready to start writing.